The fights that we need to see in 2025, I feel like a bunch of these are pretty obvious. There are about 3 to 4 fights that are at the top of everyone's list. Couple curveballs in there as well, but let's get right into it. The most important one, the one that Dana said, this is the fight we need to see in 25, and I think we all agree with him.
100%. 100%.
Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Going into the Stipe fight, I did not think this fight was possible. I thought we were going to see Jon maybe not retire right away, but, go away. We're not going to really hear from him very frequently, which I guess is kind of what's happening. But I think we're seeing some very public negotiating going on. The whole buildup for Jon and Stipe, Dana kept kind of trying to back Jon into a corner. He kept saying the winner should fight Tom Aspinall, kind of making it seem like if they don't, then maybe they're a little bit scared of the guy. And we're seeing Jon do some public negotiating as well. Initially, he was very dismissive of the fight. It didn't seem like it was possible. But now he's kind of saying, for the right price, I would fight this guy, which again, puts the ball back in Dana's court, saying, if you pay me more than you've ever paid anyone, you cheap fuck, maybe I'll fight this guy.
What would it take?
So again, I'm a little more hopeful for this fight than I was a couple months ago. I'm still not 100% sure, but I think it is possible. And what the Stipe fight showed us, obviously Stipe looked terrible. He looked old. You couldn't take too much away from it. But Jon looked a lot different than he did against Ciryl Gane. He was leaner. He looked so much faster, a little bit more dialed in. So again, the reason why we want to see this fight is because it's the two best heavyweights in the world. That's why we watch the UFC, to watch the best fighters fight each other. So all this extracurricular stuff, the back and forth on each side has made this, one of the more hyped fights in recent times in the UFC. So I want to see it for that stuff as well. But these are the two best heavyweights, and we want to see them fight each other. 2025, this is the most important fight to make. Another one on everyone's list, we saw Khamzat Chimaev
Smash.
Get the biggest win of his career in 2024, a first-round submission over Robert Whittaker. We saw him do to Whittaker what nobody has before. He ragdolled him, he took him down, and he submitted him. And one of the best matchups you can make in the UFC right now is Khamzat Chimaev fighting Dricus du Plessis. Obviously, Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis, the rematch is set for February. Friend of the program, Eric Nixick, is Sean Strickland's coach. Nothing but love and respect for the boys out in Vegas at Extreme Couture. The rematch between Strickland and DDP was definitely justified. Strickland, that was a super close fight. A lot of people thought Strickland won.
Whatever that means.
So you got to make the rematch. The reason why it sucks, though, we've already seen Strickland fight DDP. We got a pretty good idea of how this one is going to play out. Now, it was a great fight. But again, there's not too much that's going to change in this rematch. I think it'll look very similar to the first one. A fight that I have no idea how it will play out is Khamzat versus Dricus du Plessis. Talk about a clash of styles. In 24, we saw him go from #1 contender to champion to now champion who has defended his belt against a guy in Israel Adesanya who's one of the best middleweights of all time. So will Khamzat be able to get this monster down? I mean, Dricus du Plessis is massive for middleweight. His style, I think, will honestly help him in this fight. A more awkward guy. I don't know how Khamzat's going to handle it. This is one of the more exciting fights you can make in 25. And the last one that I think kind of wraps up this big three of fights that we all need to see in this year is Alex Pereira versus Big Ank versus Magomed Ankalaev.
Holy shit.
These guys have probably should have fought a long time ago at this point. The ducking allegations have never been higher toward Alex Pereira. As a Pereira fanboy myself, I'm fine not seeing this fight because I kind of want to ride this thing till the wheels fall off. I don't think Pereira has that much longer in his career. He's 37, 38 years old. He's been in the game for a while, even before the UFC with kickboxing. If he beats Ankalaev, that puts him in this new category, right? He is clearly a top, I don't know where he ranks, honestly, so I shouldn't say clearly, but he is one of the best fighters of all time, and you give his backstory, you give the way that he's done it, he belongs almost on like Mount Rushmore. So if this guy can go out there and beat Ankalaev, that puts him in new territory. And Ankalaev, this guy is super deserving, but all this talk about this guy being a crotch sniffer, a wrestler, this new wave of like UFC fans who came in 2020, like before this guy fought Jan Blachowicz for the vacant belt, nobody called him a crotch sniffer. He was known more as a kickboxer. I'm not saying he was the most exciting fighter in the world, but he was a stand-up guy first.
Want to talk about stand-up guys?
Sorry, Beats.
Now, he is probably the best wrestler in this top picture, in like the top 10 of the light heavyweight division. He's probably the most well-rounded guy in the division, but he is not like this grappling heavy guy, you know? Again, not the most exciting style, but before that fight, no one was calling him a crotch sniffer just because the neck beard, the last name, that thing has kind of taken a life of its own now. But yes, he definitely has the grappling advantage over Pereira, as I'm sure most guys do. But, you know, I don't think it's going to be as easy as people are making out to be. Now, you know, again, obviously he has the grappling advantage. He will be the favorite if those two end up fighting, but he is a legit kickboxer. His stand-up is very good. So I'm very curious to see how that fight will play out. Again, you kind of get pressured into, when you're fighting Pereira, you kind of get pressured into saying, I'm not going to shoot. I'm going to stand and bang with him. Probably not the best idea, as we've seen time and time again. But I really want to see this fight. All right, so those are the three most important ones. Those are the consensus of what everyone wants to see. Let's have some more fun here. This is a little bit random, but Bo Nickal, the comments were flooded. You guys think I don't read the comments? The comments were blowing up with 3 to 4 comments about how I'm an idiot after my criticism of Nickal in his last fight against Paul Craig. One of the most boring fights I've ever seen. You know, we were interested to see how's Nickal's grappling going to match up with the jiu-jitsu, with the submissions of Paul Craig. And we are still left with the same questions. We didn't see any grappling exchanges. We didn't really see anything, period. The guys were just standing there looking at each other. I think Nickal has potential to be a top guy at middleweight eventually, but just with the way he talks, with the hype around him, I really wanted to see him put on a great performance, because now we have back-to-back kind of underwhelming performances, especially in that one. When you're fighting a guy with a stand-up like Paul Craig, you know, I would kind of hope for a little bit more activity, and we just didn't see it at all. And then he was very dismissive of the hate. He made it seem like he didn't understand it at all. So again, I was not very happy with that performance, not very happy with the way he handled himself. And just to clarify, this is fights I want to see in 2025. Doesn't necessarily mean it's next. So Bo Nickal, he's got 4 wins in the UFC. I don't necessarily think they're going to give him a top 10, a top 15 ranked guy yet. I'd like to see him fight once, maybe twice more. But before the end of the year, here's a matchup for you. Give him Marvin Vettori, the Italian dream. I think I was in like middle school the last time this guy fought. It's been quite some time. He's been a guy in this top 5, top 10 picture at middleweight forever. And it's about time he defends that damn spot. So the matchup I always said for Nickal was Jack Hermansson, just because stylistically I'd like to see him in there with a guy who's got a little bit of grappling credentials, right? So I think Hermansson, that fight is still there, but I just wanted to throw in Vettori because we haven't seen Vettori forever. I saw Vettori tweet recently, kind of a joking remark about like, who wants to get an old guy with a nice number next to his name who's on his way out the door anyway? Who would say no to such a golden opportunity that is? I think stylistically it makes sense because of the number, right? Eventually, Nickal is going to have to fight a top guy. Once he's at 5-6-0, it's time for him to fight, a top 10, top 15 ranked guy. But more so stylistically, a lot of these guys in middleweight, I don't think have any grappling credentials, and Nickal should just be able to take him down. Vettori, not the case. He's massive for that division. And again, I think Nickal could be great. That's why I want to see him tested. Everyone's saying how good you are. Let's see how good you are. So it's a massive test for him, and that's why I want to see that fight. So in January, we have Merab making his first title defense, and we have Umar Nurmagomedov getting his first crack at the belt. Umar, a sizable favorite, which is surprising to some people, but it shouldn't be. He's coming in about -220. A lot of people think he's going to win that fight. What would be next for him if he does? Petr Yan.
The official weight for Petr Yan.
2024 was good to Mr. Yan after a couple of very, very unfortunate years. We saw him get back in the win column with 2 wins. He beat Song Yadong in March, and then most recently he beat Deiveson Figueiredo, and in what was an awesome vintage Petr Yan performance. Let's see this guy fight for the belt again. Let's see him fight Umar Nurmagomedov. Stylistically, are you kidding me? This is a sick fight. We've only seen Umar in there with one high-level guy in Corey Sandhagen this past summer. Obviously, I'm very curious to see how the Merab fight goes. Merab's being a little bit slept on. I don't know how the grappling sequences will go. There are a lot of unknowns about Umar Nurmagomedov. Like, I think he's that high level, but we've only seen it once, right? So Merab's a great fighter in his own right. And the grappling, again, he probably has the edge in the grappling against Umar. The striking very much favors Umar. But when you get Umar Nurmagomedov and Petr Yan, two of the more all-around, two of the more complete mixed martial artists that we have in the UFC, I'd love to see those guys fight. But for Petr Yan, I don't know if he's entitled to a title shot just yet. He probably needs one more fight. There's another guy at bantamweight who's probably one fight away from a title shot, and that is former champion Sugar Sean O'Malley. A fight that we need to see run back is Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley. I love O'Malley. I've loved watching the rise these last couple years of him going from contender to champion was awesome. But Petr Yan won that fight. Let's all grow up. Let's be honest with each other. 2025, it's the year of honesty, and we can all finally admit that Petr Yan won that fight. We could talk till we're blue in the face arguing about who won that fight. What better way to figure it out, right? So I want to see those two run it back. Super close fight, and what better time than right now? You could make an argument the winner of that fight fights for the belt next. So why not? Let's have those two run it back. That is another fight I really, really want to see in 2025. I also think there's a chance O'Malley can kind of just sit out and maybe be granted a title shot. Again, the UFC loves this guy. I want to see Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley. Run that back. I think Islam Makhachev will finish with an argument of being the greatest fighter the UFC has ever seen. But what does he need to do that? So he's booked in January, rematch with Arman Sarukian. Arman, the clear, deserving number one contender at lightweight. And I think this is a great fight, right? This is a rematch. Arman's UFC debut, he was 22 years old. It was a very close fight. But these guys are just different fighters now, right? They've evolved immensely in the stand-up. Two of the more well-rounded fighters in the UFC. And this is going to be a great fight. But if Islam can get it done, what is next for this guy? The two clear matchups on the table, I'm really not interested in, and neither is he. So, Charles Oliveira.
Some of the morning, huh? Some of the morning.
A rematch of a fight he dominated. I love Charlie Olives. I love the guy. But that fight just doesn't really interest me. I think it would go the same way as it had last time. Now, if Oliveira gets another win, then he's the clear deserving contender. But right now, that fight just really doesn't do it for me. The other one, Ilia Topuria. Now, I think this fight would be one of the best matchups of all time, but I'm not sure you even have to waste it right now. Ilia defended the belt for the first time a couple months ago. Now, there aren't that many good matchups for him at 45, I will say that, but if you're Islam, this narrative is just going to be that it was all rematches and you beat smaller guys that were coming up. So when you go through his resume, again, I don't think this way, but you could make the argument, he beat Volk twice, who was a smaller guy. If he goes and beats Oliveira, it's, 2 wins over the same guy. I want to see him move up. Now, I know him and Bilal are allegedly like best friends. I'm not really buying that either. But he should be fighting Bilal Muhammad for the belt at 170. Since Bilal is ducking him, since Bilal they're allegedly super close friends, I'm hoping that Shavkat beats Bilal Muhammad just so we could see Islam move up, just so we can see Islam challenge somebody else. Because, again, I think skill for skill, this guy is one of the best fighters of all time. But in terms of his resume, to put him in those conversations, we need to see him get double champ status. So if Shavkat can get it done in 2025, I want to see Islam move up. I mean, I'm getting excited thinking about that fight. Can you imagine the clinching? Can you imagine the clinch sequences in this fight? Two of the best fighters in the clinch we have in the UFC. I think Islam would be able to get him down and win the fight that way. But the striking in this fight is interesting. The grappling sequences will be very high level. This is another just sick fight to make in 2025. Speaking of Ilia, I'm not really sure where you go with him. I really don't want to see him fight Volk again. Diego Lopez, for me, would be like the most fun fight you can make. I also think there are only 2 paths to victory to beat Ilia Topuria. No one's going to outskill the guy unless you're Islam Makhachev. But no one at 45 is going to outskill the guy right now, is going to stand there and outstrike him. So the 2 ways would be you're a madman. You make it a firefight. You run forward like a freakazoid and you try to knock him down in a flash KO. The one guy that would be able to do that is Diego No Regrets Lopez. But I don't even think that's like realistic. I don't think that anyone is going to be able to knock out Ilia right now. He's shown he has a chin. And he's also shown that his striking is about as good as we've ever seen. The guy just knocked out Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski back to back. So he's pretty freaking good. But we all hear about the guy's grappling credentials. We hear about how good of a grappler he is. And I'm sure that might be true. But if we want to find out, let's put him in there with Mosvar. His last fight in December versus Aljamain Sterling, super close fight, super good fight for the people that just stand them up crew. I certainly enjoy the striking element of MMA more than the grappling. But if you are a true MMA fan, you got to love those type of grappling sequences, right? Just so high level. The fight was pretty much all on the ground and it was still very entertaining. It was very close. Mosvar got the dub. He's undefeated. He looked great in that fight. And I think that would be a very interesting fight. If Ilia really had he was a wrestler first and now he became the striker. That's great. It's one thing to do it against Bryce Mitchell, but let's see if he can do it against Mosvar. I don't think that fight will happen just because of how big a star Ilia is right now. I think Mosvar probably needs one more win. Maybe a Diego Lopez rematch. That would be another fun one. But yeah, Mosvar would be my pick to fight Ilia Topuria. Ilia versus Islam is awesome, but just from Islam's point of view, I would rather see him move up and challenge for double champ status rather than, him again put his belt on the line against a smaller guy moving up, they themselves going for double champ status. I'd rather see Islam go do it himself. A couple more I'm just going to run through. Dustin Poirier.
Hot sauce for everybody. Everybody gets one.
Another one of my favorite fighters. He says he's got one last dance. He kind of said that about Islam as well, but when you look that good, it's a little bit hard to hang him up. The two that we're all throwing out there are two trilogies, Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway. Out of those two, I would much rather see Max Holloway. Neither of those fights really do it for me, but when you start ripping off these names, there are not too many guys. This guy has fought everyone, so there are not too many, new exciting matchups for the guy. Ilia Topuria, he said, I want to move up. I would even fight a contender. That's not going to happen, but it is fun to think about the hooks being thrown back and forth between Poirier and Ilia. But here's a curveball for you. Poirier, let's settle the score. You go and you fight Colby Covington.
Sounds like something a nerd or a virgin would do.
The amount of words this guy has said about you, you've been very clear. I will not fight him in the octagon. You just saw Joaquin Buckley dog walk him in the octagon. So that might have changed your mind a little bit. I don't think this fight is going to happen. I think, again, it really looks like it would be a Holloway trilogy. And again, that fight is exciting to me. I would take the Holloway trilogy. But if you're Poirier, I don't really know why. You're 2-0 against the guy. You don't really see trilogies unless it's a title fight where, one guy is 2-0. So that fight would be awesome. I would love that fight. But I just wanted to throw that out there because as I was looking up these potential matchups for Dustin, he has fought everyone. So that's one guy that he hasn't fought. Colby Covington. I know they've fought in the gym before. Why not do it on a big stage? Why not get paid to do it? And again, I think Colby's a little washed now. So, if you're Dustin, why not do it right now? Speaking of Gaethje, some of these guys that are getting a little bit older, you can call it a retirement fight, but it's a little bit different than, Paul Pierce trotting out there and shooting a 3 from half court, and that being your final, your retirement tour. It doesn't really work like that in MMA. We're talking about, a retirement fight, Gaethje versus Poirier. It's like, one of them is going to get sparked unconscious for like the 5th time in their career. Like, I don't really want to see that, but again, they're making their own decision, so it doesn't really matter what I want to see. Actually, it does matter. That's what this video is all about, what I want. So what do I want? Justin Gaethje. Let's see a fight. Dan Hooker. Violence personified. This fight would be bonkers. Hooker has just dragged himself back into this title picture at lightweight. He's got 3 wins in a row. Again, stylistically, this would just be a banger. These are two guys who throw down every chance they get. This would be a sick fight. But when it comes to, rankings wise, it makes a lot of sense, right? They're ranked 3 and 6 right now. If Gaethje still wants to compete for a title, which seems like he still does, I know he said he's got 5 fights left, like 10 fights ago. I don't think the guy really wants to hang it up. So, for Hooker, if he can get a win, then he's probably one fight away from fighting for the belt. And if you're Gaethje, you still have that argument. We've out of that big four at lightweight, these kind of guys, the unlimited title shot glitch that him and Poirier get, Gaethje, if he wins this fight, he has an argument to be right back in the mix. He's never fought Islam, and a lot of these guys, like I said, are kind of running it back with him. So this fight makes a lot of sense, and I really want to see it. A few more I'll just rip through. I've said that like 3 different times. Pantoja, I mean, I've been looking. He's fought literally everyone in this top 10. I think he's finally starting to get the credit he deserves. But what do you do with this guy? I saw Figueiredo say that I can make 125, that I want to move down and fight this guy. Is that real? No, I don't think so. That guy looked like he was killing himself every time he cut down to make 25. And now he's in his late 30s and he hasn't done it in years. I don't know if it's realistic for him to make 125 at this point in his career, but that is the only fight to make. I was going to say Kai Kara-France. Kai Kara-France even has a loss to this guy. Manel Kape looked so good. He looked like the guy that we were expecting when he came over from Ryzen, a guy who was going to be able to come right in and compete for world titles. Maybe he has realized his potential. So I would like to see that fight again down the line. But again, Pantoja's beat all these guys. We're debating, if he's only beat him once, it seems fine because, he beat Royval twice and he beat Moreno 3 times. And those are probably the 2 most deserving guys. So it is kind of a clusterfuck at the top here. So if Figgy can get it done, give him the shot. Figueiredo, it's another rematch, but Figueiredo won that one. So I would like to see that. I don't know if he could get it done, but Figgy, I love Figgy. I love both these guys, man. That would be a sick fight. It was a sick fight the first time they fought. So I'm really praying that Figgy can actually make the weight because that fight would be nuts. But Kai Kara-France, if he doesn't get a title shot, which again, I would be interested in that fight if he were to fight Pantoja, but him versus Manel Kape, they were supposed to fight. Kape just keeps calling this guy out. I think that would be a great fight. Kai Kara-France is coming out, a first round knockout over Ursig. Like I said, he looked, as good as he ever has in his most recent fight. So the last one, I'll just throw this in there. Michael Johnson versus Bobby Green. We saw MJ, the final card of the year. He had another spectacular knockout. I love Michael Johnson. I don't know how him and Bobby Green have never fought. Similar style. They've kind of been in like the same picture in that lightweight division forever. So I would love to see that. Michael Johnson, he's like 21-17. What a real dog he is. I would love to see that fight. 2025, another great year for the UFC. Let's see all these fights get made ASAP.